We can go ahead and get started. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Sandag Audit Committee meeting Friday, January 28th, 2022 at 12:30 p.m. We do have a quorum. Before we get started, I would like to ask our interpreter, Carlos Diaz, to introduce himself and walk through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting. Carlos?
Thank you very much, Councilmember Zito. We'll begin with the instructions in Spanish, and I will be back with the instructions in English. Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos, bienvenidas a esta sesión del Comité de Auditoría correspondiente al viernes 28 de enero. Se está ofreciendo servicio de interpretación simultánea. Para hacer uso del mismo, solo es necesario desplazarse a la barra inferior de Zoom, donde aparecen sus controles. De ahí haga clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Once again, interpretation is being provided to and from Spanish. To use the feature, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where your meeting controls are. There, click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, or other mobile device, first press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Gracias and thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. So with that, we would move into the Pledge of Allegiance. Could we have the flag? Yes. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now go ahead and talking about the minutes and approval of the meeting minutes. Did I have any public comments on the minutes?
I don't see any hands from the public, Chair.
Any board member comments on the minutes? Bob?
Yeah, just one comment on the board minutes, very first, where we're talking about approval of the board minutes, or we're announcing the committee. I just think we need to be consistent when we identify the committee members and their titles. And I know pretty much Chair Zito, everybody knows you're a board member on Sandag. I think that needs to be identified. And myself, I'm a public member. I think that needs to be identified, since we're identifying it for everyone else as to what their positions are. And other than that, I'd be glad to approve.
Well, before you do that, Bob, I did have one question on the minutes myself, but thanks for that comment.
Sure.
It's a good point, which, it's been a while, and I guess I should have opened it by saying, even though it's a little late now, Happy New Year, everybody. It's our first meeting of the new year. Looking forward to a great year, but it has been a while since we met. And I was curious because on page 8 of the agenda report, which I think is part of the minutes, it is listing all members present. And I thought board member Wong Nickerson missed our last meeting. Is that not correct?
It's correct, she did.
Okay, so can we also update the minutes to reflect that as well, that board member Wong Nickerson on, it's in page 8, missed the last meeting as well. So with that, I go ahead and entertain your motion, Bob.
You're muted, Bob.
You're still muted, Bob.
Sorry about that, all. It has been a while. Anyway, I would motion acceptance of the minutes from the last meeting with the changes that were suggested.
Awesome, thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it, Mayor. A second from Mayor Vasquez. Can we call the roll?
Thank you. And I will go ahead and make those changes as soon as the meeting concludes today. Thank you for the feedback. Board member Chair Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. Board member Vice Chair Vasquez, excuse me.
Vasquez, yes.
Thank you very much. Public member Wong Nickerson. I believe she is absent, actually. My apologies. Agnes Wong Nickerson is absent today. Public member Stuart Halpern.
Halpern, yes.
Thank you. And public member Bob Monson.
Monson, yes.
Yes, and I apologize. I realize now that I called on Vice Chair Vasquez, but that's changed since the last meeting. So I'll make sure that's updated for the minutes as well. And with that, that motion does pass with those members present, 4 yeses and 1 absence.
Thank you. Perfect. With that, we'll move on to item number 2, public comments and member comments. Do we have any members of the public wishing to make comments? Seeing no hand raised, how about board members? Do any board members wish to make comments? Not of items not on the agenda. Seeing no, Mayor Vasquez.
Yes, fairly quickly here. Just wanted to say Happy New Year's to everyone. And I'm looking forward to a brand new year where this particular committee will really stand firm on making sure that we provide the kind of information to the board that they're seeking, but also that opportunity to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to reduce risk for the agency. So really happy to be part of this dynamic group. And I'm looking forward to all of the work that we're going to do as we move forward throughout the year.
Thank you. Great comments, Mayor Vasquez. Looking forward to it too. And exciting stuff, and hopefully not too exciting. Let's see, any other board members wishing to make comments about non-agenda items? Seeing nobody with their hand raised, we will move on to item number 3, the executive director's report. Who's taking that today?
Chair Zito, it's Colleen Clemenson. I'll be
Okay,
taking
Colleen.
that for our executive director, Hassan Akrata, who had to be out of the office today. He was up in Riverside at UC Riverside speaking to a class about regional planning. So
Perfect.
anyway, I'm in his place today. So he wanted me to wish you all a happy new year. It's just as you had said, Chair, that it seems late, but it's our first meeting. It's your first meeting of the new year. So happy new year. And we hope that you all are staying safe and healthy. I'm going to run through just a few PowerPoint slides for you to recap some of the highlights from 2021. And these are some of the things that we shared with the board of directors at their first meeting in January. So I know our expert production team is going to pull up the slides here. The first is the Mid-Coast Trolley extension. And in November, that project opened for business. So super duper exciting, big grant from the federal government that really matched dollar for dollar the region's commitment. So this is one of the largest infrastructure projects in the history of the San Diego region. And we also found out early this year that we are the recipients of a federal grant of $405,000 to do some more detailed planning on the stations of the blue line that are further to the south. So everything we can do to really upgrade and make this system one of the best systems you'll find anywhere in the nation. The next slide, and this is near and dear to my heart, is that the board of directors on December 10th approved the 2021 regional plan, the transformational transportation vision for the region's future, looking out to the year 2050. So we've got a big plan ahead to implement this vision, and excited to work with all of you, the other policy advisory committees, stakeholders, and the board of directors to make this vision a reality. We received more than 17,000 public comments during the development of the plan, and we're able to incorporate most of that. There was a whole lot of public testimony at the board meeting on December 10th, and a wide variety of stakeholder support. So really proud of that work. And again, looking forward to the future as we implement the regional plan. Next, we made a lot of progress in our Otay Mesa East border crossing. So this is the proposed new border crossing port of entry that will really focus on goods movement. In February, we're going to be working with our partners in Caltrans and Mexico to sign an additional memorandum of understanding so that we can continue our work together on this very important project that's great for our economy, great for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and certainly well representative of our cross-border collaboration. Del Mar Bluffs and Losan, another big milestone in 2021. And as we continue to look forward, working on stabilizing the bluffs and at the same time working on a plan to get the rail lines off the bluff once and for all. So great opportunity here for us to also be ready for some federal funding to implement the longer vision plan in this important rail corridor. Central Mobility Hub. We're moving forward with the environmental process, looking at the different alternatives. We're now also looking at a downtown alternative for the Central Mobility Hub, and really also focused on making that transit connection to the airport. Every other major city in the nation, and if not the world, most have a direct transit connection. So working closely with MTS and our other partners in making that a reality. And then just recently, this happened on Tuesday, we broke ground on the new Pershing Bikeway project. So this is a new bikeway project, certainly emphasizing safety. It's so important that we're able to separate bicyclists and pedestrians from vehicular traffic. This is going to be a great example of that. This is a roughly 3-mile stretch that's heavily utilized along Balboa Park and some of our most urban neighborhoods, and making that connection into downtown. Coming up very soon, the 4th and 5th Avenue bikeways along the Georgia Meade Bikeway, Landis Bikeway projects, all in some of the most urbanized part of our region, where these are truly transportation options that allow people to take a bike, maybe instead of driving their car. So by the end of the year, we'll have 11 new miles to add to the region's bike network. And lastly, I'm happy to announce that the first meeting of the Regional Equitable Housing Subcommittee, this is a subcommittee of the Sandag Board of Directors that will be led by Supervisor Tara Lawson-Reamer and co-chaired by Mayor Gloria. The first meeting will be on February 1st, and this group is truly charged with looking at how we can get more affordable housing built in the region. There are millions of dollars coming from the state of California that we need to figure out how we maximize that investment to help look at what happens in mobility hubs and to truly work with the development community so that the housing actually gets built. So we certainly look forward to working with stakeholders throughout the community to implement the regional plan. The last thing I wanted to mention is, given kind of where the numbers are with COVID, we are going to be again closed next week. The Sandag offices will be closed to the public. Our staff will be continuing to work remotely. Many of us are in the office, but we're encouraging everyone to stay healthy and safe. And that concludes the Sandag update, and I'll turn it back to you, Chair Zito.
Thanks, Colleen. Great information. You're very correct about the airport being one of the few without a transportation connection. My snarky self would also like to point out it's also, I think, the only major city airport that has only one runway. So you think we can help them get a second runway too? No, just kidding.
That was on the ballot a few years ago. I think the voters made that decision.
Yes,
They made that decision for us.
No, they did. They got, well, yeah. Anyway, so the other item. So do you know what the expectation is around this meeting next month? Are we still expected to be virtual based upon how plans are shaping up for Sandag?
You know, I am happy to work with you know, Mary and Lloyd on that. I think at this point in time, we're really taking direction from Chair Blakespear, and we are most likely to be remote again in February. So I think
what I recall for seeing the note from Hassan is that he said that the first meeting that will be in person will be a board meeting. So if we don't have an in-person board meeting before our next meeting, I'm assuming we won't be in person.
yes, and that's the direction we're headed at this point, Chair.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I
that.
think all of us are eager to get back in person, but we have to kind of recognize, you know, the chair will sort of take the lead on that.
Okay, thanks. Are there any public members who wish to comment on the executive director's update? Seeing no hands raised. Oh, wait, I see a hand that just went up. Who's that? Tim Bylosh. Can we unmute Tim?
Yes, don't mean to take much time. I just had a question, going to some of the other meetings, what the updates for the timetable for the underground tracking for the Del Mar tracks relative to the need to do fencing. It'd be good to know how they coordinate with each other. It's just my only comment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, we'll try to see if we can, I know that there are a lot of updates at the board meetings, and we can make sure that that information continues to get shared out. And any board members with comments? Stuart.
Thank you, Chair, and also Happy New Year, everybody. Good to see you all again. Thanks for the update, Colleen. One thing I was curious about is, I think since our last meeting, there have been a number of senior executive retirements or maybe some other changes. Just curious if you could give us a little bit of an update on what's going on in terms of filling positions. Obviously, Sandag has a big few years ahead and having vacancies in senior spots. I'm not sure I'd characterize it specifically as risk, but it's something that seems relevant. And if there's any updates, I'd love to hear about it.
Thank you, Member Halpern. Chair Zito, may I respond?
Yes, please do.
Oh, okay. Anyway, Member Halpern, you're always an A student, up to speed on everything that's going on Sandag, and we truly appreciate that. I think what you're referring to is at the end of the calendar year, the Chief of Capital Projects and Chief of Planning and Innovation, Jim Lithicum, and then Ray Trainer, both retired from Sandag. So our Executive Director, Hassan, is in the process of making some appointments. He will be making an official announcement on Tuesday next week, laying out his new organizational structure. So I do know that he plans to get the word out to the board and policy committee members on that new organizational structure. And I think there'll be more to follow there. So thanks for the question.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Do you have any other questions?
Nope, that's it for me. Thank you, Chair.
I'll just note your hand's still up, that's all. So with that, I don't see any other board members with their hands up. And we will then move on to Mary's update of the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Chair Zito. This will be real quick. We have the purchase card audit that was due to come this term, but actually is delayed. We wanted to give management a little bit more time to respond, and they have responded. And we have a response and a corrective action plan that will come to the audit committee next month, along with the audit itself. We also will be starting, or have already started really, two of the other projects on the plan, one being the audits, procurement and contracts, and the other being accounts payable and encumbrances. So we have two auditors on that doing their own now that they've kind of, customized and familiarized themselves. They're going to be doing their own audits moving forward. We're also, of course, limited on our staff, and sadly, we are losing another one of our staff members who is an awesome auditor. We had him as an intern, and he was amazing, and I was able to bring him on as an auditor one. And I was sad to hear, but sometimes awesome auditors move on, and it's hard to compete with the pay out there. And if you're good and you're new, that's even more pleasing to the eye. So, it was hard to compete with that to keep him, but I wish him a lot of luck. That's Michael Ryan. Like I said, did an awesome job moving from an intern to an auditor. He's going to do amazing in his career as an auditor. And I'm excited to see him grow as a government auditor, or any type of auditor he chooses to go into. From there, we are also getting just wrapped up our two audits at the board meeting. Sorry, today. One was the vendor audit and the SR 125 review. One thing that did come out of that meeting was that there seemed to be a lack of discussion on what the auditor's up to, not really understanding that audits take time, and that we're following an approved audit plan. So with that understanding, hopefully I can work with Colleen and Ray, and we are able to get our audits that we do complete. The two that I just discussed were completed 4 months ago. We are able to get them to the board more timely. So the board does see the hard work that's being put forth from a very small office. So with that, I have nothing further to update. Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I do have one more item I did want to discuss. And Chair, I discussed this with you and shared that I was going to be bringing this matter up. So it's not news to you. You know, part of my job as the first IPA of the organization and setting this office up is to really prepare for my exit, right? So my succession plan, and to ensure that if I am to leave tomorrow, that the office would continue and would continue to run smoothly and be successful. And that includes incorporating policies and procedures. And I've been doing that all along. We've implemented several board policies, you know, policy 39, 41, and 42, as well as other kind of administrative policies and procedures around reporting processes and such. I also have an engagement manual that helps lead my auditors on how to perform an audit and ensure that we're adhering to government auditing standards. One of the areas that I think needs to be discussed and looked at moving forward would be any allegation against the IPA, either internal or external type allegations that the IPA may face. Sort of that process gets looked at and that we get a formal policy and procedure in play that's written. So we kind of know how to handle that and move forward. My position is very different than Sandag's staff position, as being that I am independent and I have a reporting structure that's very different than most, other than Hassan. And so I just think it's important that we bring this discussion out and that we ensure that it's something that works for everybody and it's fair and that it's kind of in writing and there's a structure and a procedure that can be followed and be consistently followed. And that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Mary, for the update. I agree that I think that would be a useful bit of information to be shared and talked about. And sorry if I'm looking a little funny, your lighting's being a little awkward. You keep going
I
dim.
know, I don't know why.
It's kind of interesting, but anyway, so and yeah, and inclusive into that is understanding how other special districts policies work out in that space too. So getting an education of how this is handled for other things, like for example the airport authority or something like that, and see what their procedures are and compare ours, and then actually get something clearly understood, since it does seem to be something that has been getting utilized at times. So
yeah, and
sure that,
what better person to help us with that, because we happen to have a retired
right.
auditor on the committee who was with the city of with the San Diego port. So I think, you know, it's a perfect time to kind of get it standardized and in writing and have something we can follow.
Yeah, so, sounds good. The other one is relative to your earlier comments, and apologies, this is going to bleed over a little bit into our actual agenda topic, but it does seem like the topic this morning would have been a good opportunity to remind the board that there was a presentation made a couple years ago about, and an approval of staff positions that were never funded, and
Right.
that those staff funding for those staff position requests may be coming up again. And so, you know, if the board would like to see a lot more audits, then it should be funding more positions to get those audits done. So
Yeah, I agree.
but I don't know if that was brought up. Unfortunately, I don't sit on the board at the moment and have taken a habit of watching the YouTube videos instead of attending directly, but recently. But anyway.
Yeah, I did bring it up. I did
Okay.
let them know that, you know, we are a much smaller office and audits do take time, and
Right.
hopefully, you know, without going into too much whining about it, I did remind them of that.
Okay, well, that's good. It's certainly appropriate.
Yeah.
Yes, as you said, you have a small office, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Any public member comments on the IPA's update? Sorry. We will see. Okay, I see Tim Bylash with his hand up. Can we unmute him?
Thank you once again, Tim Bylash up in Del Mar. I just wanted to commend the auditors. I heard the report this morning at the executive board meeting, and it was, I think, superbly done. And I anticipate that your input makes a big difference. And I just want to support getting the appropriate staffing and having the executive board look at that closely in the coming weeks to months. I think the COVID and other kinds of restrictions have made it particularly difficult. And I did this report this morning, I think was exemplary. So I just wanted to commend you and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim Bailish. Greatly appreciate it. I don't see any other public members with their hands up. And do any board members have comments or questions? Bob.
Yeah, just a comment on Mary's position and it being so new. And I think Stuart would agree with me, and I think everybody here on the committee would agree with me, is that things change. I mean, and that's the importance of policies, is that we get processes in place. Mary's position as the IPA is much different than really anybody else at the Sandag. I even look at Hassan, it's a little different because Mary is reporting to an audit committee through the board, an advisory to the board. And I think it's really important that you have specific policies. Mary alluded that I was at the Port of San Diego, and for my position, I had very specific policies, processes in place. It covered a multitude of things, including investigation, allegations against me. And so just wanted to comment on that. I appreciate Chair Zito, your support on that. And I'm willing to help any way I can.
Thanks, Bob. And Stuart.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm not sure if Robert's Rules of Order would say this is a point of information, but I'm hoping somebody can answer for us the question of whether it's that the board entertains amendments to board policies just once a year. It seems like that's maybe been a pattern, if not a, sort of something legislatively mandated. And to the extent that's the case, and Mary's suggesting, and I think Bob makes a really good point about, process around the issue Mary raised, but perhaps other things that would rise to potential review of or amending aspects of Board Policy 39. It would just be really helpful to understand if there is a cycle or timing at which the board does that, because I know in past years, we had some discussion, and I know that it took quite a while to get in front of the board because there was some notion like the board likes to do these things all at once, and so they package them all up like once a year. And please correct me if I'm mistaken, but perhaps Amber Lynn or somebody else could weigh in on that.
Looks like Amber Lynn has her hand up, Stuart. Yes, we'll see what she has to say.
I'm
Yeah,
happy to answer
thanks.
that, Chair. Yes, Mr. Halpern, we do typically take amendments to board policies on an annual basis. However, that is subject to the agenda setting structure that we have in place. And just as a reminder, should the audit committee wish to make or propose amendments to its board policy 39, we would first present those to the executive committee for review, and then they would move on to the board for consideration as well. We do plan to bring sort of our just our annual general amendments later on this year, and we're aiming for the summer timeframe. So if there is some interest, please let me know. I'm happy to work with Mary to get that agendized for a discussion.
Great, thank you. So where I was going with this is thinking along the lines of the notion of a critical path, is just to make sure that our committee works in sync with the board's calendar on that. And so whether we take that up at a next meeting, whether we create an ad hoc subcommittee to contemplate any of a variety of potential amendments, I think we should just be mindful of that calendar and the critical path. Thanks.
Thank you, Stuart. Seeing no other board member comments, That takes us to the main part of our agenda, which is item number 5, the proposed fiscal year IPA performance budget. And I think, Mary, you'll be starting with this.
Yes, thank you. Okay, every year, in accordance, of course, with Board Policy 39, Section 6.3, the Independent Performance Auditor has prepared the proposed Office of Independent Performance Auditor's budget for fiscal year 23 budget. I'm asking that the Audit Committee review and recommend approval to the Board of Directors. There's very little change to this specific budget. It's really pretty much consistent with last year's budget, with the exception I am requesting one additional auditor's position. As you are all aware, we brought to you in March of 2020 a pretty thorough and detailed analysis comparing various counties, city, and other government, including the port, budgets and auditors, staff, and resources, and shared with you the similarities, the budget type, the capital, we use capital improvement type, in general budget type, and then looked at the resources that is allocated and then the resources we had. With that, I think we supported about 15 positions. For example, we found that the county had 42 times more support than we had, or I'm sorry, the port auditors had 42 times. The county had 13 times more. And so we have a huge dollar oversight per auditor here compared to our other counterparts with smaller budgets, similar budgets, and similar types of budgets, such as the capital improvement project type reviews. So with that, we were able to say we supported 15, the need for 15, and we asked for 7. And of those 7, we actually received 1. Last year, we were given an Auditor 1 position, which was great. And so this year, I'm kind of being consistent with the request and asking for yet another Auditor 1 position. So this would bring us from the need of 7 to down to a still of an outstanding need of 5. So with that, I have an unfunded dollar amount of $99,000 there. There is a period that Mayor Vasquez pointed out that should be actually a comma on the new position. So it is an unfunded amount of $99,000. It's my understanding that I'm having support from management for that position. So that is a good thing, that we seem to be along the same lines of understanding and needs. So having that support means a lot. I'm not sure if management wants to speak up on that support or not, but at this point, it's my understanding that the position is a proposed position and it will be part of the proposed budget that moves forward. So it's not a given 100%, but it looks like it's a strong support for it. So I'm hopeful. And with that, I'm here for any questions that may be needed. I will say that I do have, Mike was able to pull up the PowerPoint slides that we had done for everybody back in March of 2020. If you guys would like to look at it, Mike can share that at this point and show you the detailed work that was performed and what we compared and how we compared it with, and show you the large variance of staff that we are lacking in that.
Yeah, I'll pull that up real quick. Let me know if you guys are able to see it or not. Okay. Good. Oh, there it is. Are you guys able to see this? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go down to where the comparisons are made. Pull that down to where the
Mike, go
there
up,
it is.
go up one more, Mike. I just want to actually point something out. So when we talked about the risk, I think this is important to point out, is we identified areas which we considered in our assessment of this. And as you can see, there are some considerable risks from not having sufficient staff, and that was around capital projects costs, and over budgets, both dollar and time budgets. I mean, that's something that the board has brought up many times around many different projects that's a concern for them. Construction, and that's around bidding processes, adherence to contract and invoicing and tracking. Consultants, the type of consultants and the bidding process around that. Of course, operational, which we have really put our focus on since we are such limited in staff, and that's around the purchase card, travel, and other areas of operations. Looking at forecasted revenue and projected costs, which is a huge risk. And of course, Sandag deals with that on a daily basis. Making sure that they're in fact an appearance that the public dollar is being spent appropriately. The risk around federal and state funding and assurance that there is adherence to OMB and other state regulations. State and federal oversight requirements on continuous monitoring that's required of us, and we do not currently do. Operational inefficiencies, waste and abuse, and inadequate system controls, which is another area that we've decided that we're really focusing on. So when we took this look, we considered all of those risks, and I think that that's really important to recall that those risks are still very present. Okay, Mike, you can go up.
Yeah, just to give a quick background, we used dollar oversight per auditor, which is an easy way to think about it is like if let's say an agency has $1 billion budget and 10 auditors, that means there's $100 million oversight responsibility per auditor. I just wanted to explain that before Mary gets into it.
Right, exactly. So when we compared to other San Diego agencies that are government, we found 91 times more dollar oversight per auditor at the port, 42 times more than the county of San Diego, and 13 times more than the city. So we really did use very relevant and similar government entities, and looking at it from both the city, the county, and also another special district. Go ahead, Mike.
Here's what it looks like on a graph. Let me zoom in so you guys can see a little better.
Yeah. So you can see that there's quite a gap when you're looking at what oversight we have responsibility-wise for the CIP and the total budget compared to our brother or neighboring and similar types of city, county, and special districts that we compared.
Zoom back out. Oh, too far.
And again, this is looking at just capital projects per auditor. Again, considerable difference.
Yeah.
If you look at the responsibility for Sandag per capita auditors versus others. And then this is Sandag versus other governments. And this is in total for par for other agencies. So again, quite a big gap there. Do you have any specific questions for us?
So I'm guessing that there will be questions or comments from the board. If we wrap it up, I did see there is a public member with their hand up, but you're done with the general presentation at this point?
Yes, we're done. Here I think it's important that it shows that we were really being flexible when we were asking for just the additional positions we were asking for compared to what we were supporting. So.
Okay, thanks. Well, let's go ahead and take the public member comment. Tim Bailash. Or question. If we could unmute Dr. Bailash again. Not sure. Are we having trouble? I don't see his microphone yet. There he goes. Thank you.
Thank you once again for taking my comment. I live up in Del Mar, but often in and around the county. I support the auditor funding position increase. It will work towards reassuring the public much confusion relative to Sandag activities and expenditures with these large projects and recent regional plan, and possibly help explain some of the criticism that Sandag has received both from elected officials and citizens of the county who appear to be less familiar with Sandag activities. I think it would help provide assurances to the public, accountability for the monies they're spent, and the rationale for the funding sources. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Do I have any board member questions or comments that they'd like to jump in at this point? I'm not sure who. Looks like Stuart may have won the race. I'll go with you first, Stuart.
Just for clarification, Mary, first of all, thanks for putting the PowerPoint slides up. I think maybe it was the one on page 10 that I think by itself is the simplest and clearest and really speaks loudly. But I just want to double check that in your comments, you referenced the fact that when you made the presentation back in 2020, I think you mentioned that you were requesting a staff of some number, and I can't remember if you'd said 15, but then the authorized number was substantially lower than that, if that number was 7. And then your current staff, I think, is even lower than that. So if you were to redo the bar, so first of all, could you make clear it was the bar charts that you were showing based on the 15 or the 7? Because it certainly wasn't based on the current staff, right?
No. So the bar chart that we supported was 15 to get to par, to be equal. The 7, the 7 additional staff on top of the 2 that I already had was to get us to a minimum number of staffing needs. So, and since then I've received 1. So this will be the 2nd.
Got it. So I guess to bottom line this, if you were to do those bars based on the current staff level, would you say the disparity would actually look worse?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I think that's the real story that we ourselves and the board really need to understand, that there was a huge disparity then, and the disparity now is even worse. So I think that appreciate you bringing those charts forward. Thanks. And this is an action item, I believe. Is that correct, Chair?
Yes, it is.
So I'd be happy to make a motion, or unless you want to have further comments before we do that.
I'm happy to have a motion on the floor for discussion. So yes, if you'd like to make a motion, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I would make a motion that we approve the requested budget. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks. Before I take more comments, anybody jump in with a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Wong Nickerson. And you are up next for comments too, Agnes, so go ahead.
Okay, great.
We're not going to vote yet, sorry.
Thank you so much, Mary, for the presentation. It's very helpful. My question for you is, right now your staffing is below actually what you have explained to the board before. The minimum is 7, right? And you're below that. Even adding 1 more, it doesn't bring you to the minimum.
Right.
So I'm curious, what's the management's response? Like, what's the plan to get to at least the minimum? That's question number 1. Question number 2, Sandag does have a lot of very large capital projects ongoing. And I know some, like at the airport, I believe they actually hire outside firm to look at those construction audits because of, again, staffing capacity and things like that. Is this something we should, Sandag should consider until you have a full staff that can do the capital project audit? So these are my 2 questions. Thank you.
So thank you for that. So I think the plan is, right now, Sandag management seems to be, and I'll let them respond further if they want to, seems to be pretty supportive and understands that I am highly understaffed. I think that they are looking to, cut staffing and not allowing for additional staff in their budget right now, given the circumstances. But they are, I believe, supporting this 1 additional position for me. The hope is that we are allowed to, or hopefully get better and stronger. And as we move out of this pandemic, hopefully additional staff will be supported. I kind of oppose hiring outside auditors, and it's because it's costly. One. Two, it's often you're not getting the same level of internal perspective and look. There's nobody gaining the understanding of the environment of Sandag. That takes time to get. Having that internal perspective is always, in the end, far more cost effective because you're not having to retrain and regroup and regain understanding every time you go in and you look at the environment, which is what's required of us in our professional auditing standards. So that usually is a lot more costly than just hiring. We're not a highly paid group of people, unfortunately, either. So really, our positions here are not real costly for the bang for the buck that they're really getting from us. And I believe it is far more costly to go externally on this than it would be to internally hire some auditors and keep them here.
Can I have the follow-up comment? I agree with you totally. Ideal situation is to have the right level of staff and expertise to do the construction-related audit. But right now, you don't have that number of employees to do the work. So I'm just curious, in the short term, how do we fill that gap in terms of the need of doing review and audit on these construction projects?
Well, I think, I look at, we, of course, every year when we're doing the audit plan, we consider risk. And I have these discussions with board members and with the management, and we talk about the highest risk. And from that perspective, we try to engage in the highest areas of risk and take advantage of that. I think even in a short term, if you're going to go out and pay $300,000 for external auditors, that could have funded me 2 good sized positions right away, right? So, and someone that stays and their succession, they're going to stay with us, and so is their experience and understanding. I would say if we're having, for example, one area I would agree with going and getting external auditors to handle is if you're an agency with a capital project and you have 1 or 2, you don't have an ongoing and consistent one, it is probably beneficial to hire external auditors to do those capital projects. But Sandag is ongoing with their capital projects. They always have large capital projects, and it's year to year and year after year. So, again, really what we need is just to bite the bullet and establish a good number of auditors internally. And in the end, the efficiency and the cost benefit that's going to be recovered from doing those audits will be realized. And really the benefit will be much greater than the cost.
Great, thank you. I agree with you. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Bob, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Mary, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate the budget information. I just want some clarification on the current budget request that you're making. I know you've got your new position, 99,000. Now I'm assuming that's just salary. So my question is, I noticed for training and for certifications, memberships, that amount hasn't changed any. Have you included the new position? Is that included under there?
It's not included, and I didn't increase it because, I would rather see a new position and try to manage training and spread it out and maybe get more in, local training and other types of training until we can get the funding for that. But if you're going to ask me, okay, you can have the position, but you can't have all that comes with the position, then of course I'm going to say, give me the position and I'll work out the rest, right? And that's what I'm doing. It's like, okay, I'm not going to say, ultimately, if I had my way, I would ask for it all and be consistent. But I just want a position. And if I can have a position and manage the training, I also train. I train at the federal and the state level, and I am certified to train for CPE hours. So even if I have to do training and get that training for my staff, I'll do it, because for me, the training can come and I can stretch that but the person is not stretchable, right? You can only pay someone so little, and that's going to be difficult even coming to work, because I will tell you, frankly, we're losing one of the best auditors that I helped develop, and I am so sad to see him go, frankly, because he's been offered a whole lot more money and I can't compete with it.
Okay. I appreciate that, and I certainly understand that. Again, my concern is always making sure that the auditors are getting the adequate training that they need to get.
Yes.
And that sometimes comes through membership. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. I would probably do the same thing. It's more important to have a body, a position there, and then work their training around that. But again, just want some clarification. I think there was another question that I had. Oh, going back to the one that you're losing, I assume that you're going to try filling that position as well, since that's been funded anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, so just like I did with Mike, we have been lucky enough to have an intern that has been with us for about a year. She's doing extremely well, and we've been developing her this whole time. Again, with succession planning, it's always my hope is to grab an intern, make sure they're a really good intern, and then develop them into the next auditor. You know, I always want to be able to offer an intern a professional path, not just a temporary stay, right? And so that's always been my goal is, you know, I've gotten a couple of applications for interns. My goal is to find the intern that I know will be a great auditor and then move them into a permanent position. And so that is my hope here, is I do have a solid intern that she's been doing a great job, and I hope to move her in. She's finishing up school, so it's perfect timing. Move her into a permanent position and keep her. And then, you know, we'll have to go out and hope for the best to find another person to fill those shoes.
Thank you, Mary. That's all I had, Chair Zito.
Sure.
Thank you, Bob. Andre, I see you're up.
Thank you, Chair Zito. Just a couple of comments from management side, I guess. First of all, I'm Andre Dujon, CFO. I guess so we're working currently on our fiscal year 2023 budget. And like Mary said, you know, management does support the one position that we have. It may not seem like a lot, but, you know, we had 28 requests for other positions internally, which we unfortunately cannot fill. So really, this is the only position that is being filled currently. In fact, our budget is to the point that we're actually taking out a couple dozen positions that are currently open and not filled, just to make sure that we're able to have a balanced budget for fiscal year 23. I guess just, you know, maybe for some of the newer members, again, you know, it was a state mandate back in, you know, based on AB 805 a few years ago that the audit team came on board, and we did try to go back to the state and, you know, request some revenues, but which was basically declined. And so all them, you know, $1 million may not seem like a lot, but it's all flexibly funded dollars, Transnet, TDA, and member assessments that we're using. And those are really our precious dollars, because those are the dollars that we generally use to match all our other grant funding. So again, we appreciate the fact that Mary Kay's audit shop is probably on demand. But that being said, you know, Hassan has made the commitment to at least add at least a position per year, as long as the budget allows. And again, this is the only position that currently is going to go to the board when we present the budget to them in March of this year.
Thanks for the clarification, Andre. That's helpful. I do think one of the things that would be also useful to discuss, and I don't want to put you on the spot here or one of the other management teams, and so maybe we'll talk about it more in the future, in particular as we think about where this office and the appropriate scoping should be. But you mentioned there are a lot of budget constraints right now, and those will probably continue to be getting more challenging in the years ahead unless we identify the revenue sources that were part of the latest RTP, which generally is likely going to mean passing some more ballot measures or something like that. So, I mean, is that correct in the sense that, I mean, we've heard a lot from Hassan at the board about how constrained our budget is at this point and how little money we have for major projects left. And most of what's in the RTP that was just passed is going to depend upon continue to identify additional sources, although maybe the latest infrastructure bill will help with that, but I'm not so sure. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what I can say is, we do a really good job in going and getting money.
Mhm.
And I think, we've got our fair share in the San Diego region and probably even more. But we'll continue to do that. And like you mentioned, there's $1 trillion stimulus bill that's out there. And our government relations team, our grants management team is out there really anticipating that we'll get some, along with the potential new measure. So again, we're doing what we can today, but understanding that there's a greater need in Mary Kay's department. And hopefully, as new resources come and we can dedicate some more funding towards that.
Okay. I think that addressed some of it. Thanks. I can follow up more offline with some of the other management too, but I'll just make the comment then as well that I do think that, with the latest RTP and the visions that are in that RTP, as we continue to at least become successful in identifying how we're going to build that out, that it's going to be imperative that Mary's staff gets completed as per what is needed. I mean, we all hope we'll be able to build that out. We don't have a clear line of sight of how we do that, but with that scope of projects on the horizon, we will need to have a fully fleshed out audit committee. And it's good to hear that Hassan is committed to continuing to increase the staffing, but how much that needs to be increased will be dependent upon our ability to actually realize the vision of the RTP, I think, that was just passed. Okay.
And another direction that I think I'm going to be moving until we can get sufficient staff is, I'm always looking for ways to give Sandag the best bang for their buck as far as our audits and our resources. And I think the last few audits that we've done around controls and operational have really helped and will bring a lot of improvement to Sandag as around system controls and operational processes and efficiency and effectiveness. I think next year I'm really going to start focusing on continuous auditing. Continuous auditing is a new thing, a couple of years old now. It's something that is done for high risk areas where you do have limited staff and resources. And it's really where you're just constantly just kind of looking, like one area would be contracts, looking at large contracts, looking at the tracking of those, the timeliness of those, the over budgets, where they're having a lot of amendments, and focusing on auditing those areas because they're obviously the highest then risk. And so it's really doing this continuous auditing is directing and redirecting the resources you have to hotspots or areas that appear to be risky or for one reason or another, and then just moving in that direction. And that really helps prevent things from, going too far and too much from being lost in that. So I think this next in June, when I bring the annual audit plan, you will start to see a lot of focus around continuous auditing.
Great. Okay. I guess one simple question, Mary, for you on my part, just when I was reading the staff report and the budget, I mean, the way you reflected it, the requested position on page 12 was you just listed it as unfunded. And is that because when you craft a budget, do you just work with the assumption that you will at least get the same budget that you did last year? And so this is, I mean, it might be a little bit more clear to say something like, okay, this is our budget last year, and this is $99,000 a requested increase or something like that, as opposed to unfunded, because I believe all of this is unfunded at the moment, at least until we have an approved budget.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe the unfunded part is the part that's not been yet approved, right? Because so it's unfunded until it's been approved. However, the prior year budget is always assumed approved unless there's a reason that they determine that there's no longer a need in that area, right? So the way that Sandag does it is it's continued as is, and then you have an unfunded position, and then you state why. And of course, it's because I have a new position I'm wanting. So
okay, yeah. This is a little bit unclear because once again, if we're in a time where everybody's budget constrained and asking to be reduced, we can't necessarily even assume that status quo is approved. But since again you're already so small, we would like to at least be able to get that level of comfort. But so that's good to see. good to see that we have that request. Hopefully, and the downside is, of course, that means that hopefully it'll be fulfilled, but the downside is then you have to actually fill those positions, which I know you know how challenging that can be too. So it'll create more work as well.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, that's one thing about me is I'll leave a position unfilled if I can't settle, right? Because
Right.
settling is too costly too, right? So I have, seen some applications that came across and I just didn't see that they would be a good fit. And so I just decided not to fill them. And so I really do look for quality because there's not a lot of quantity. So if I leave it unfilled, it's because I have not found a person that's going to add to our office instead of subtract from it.
Right. Yeah. Understood. Okay, I don't see anybody else up on the board. We do have a motion in a second. I'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Thank you very much, Chair. Board Member Chair Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Board Member Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you. Public Member Agnes Wong Nickerson.
Wong Nickerson, yes.
Thank you. Public Member Stuart Halpern.
Halpern, yes.
Thank you. And Public Member Bob Monson.
Monson, yes.
Thank you very much. And that item does pass unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you. This was the only item on our regular part of the agenda. So with that, our next audit committee meeting is scheduled for Friday, February 25th, 2022 at 12:30 p.m. And we are adjourned.